Listen very carefully and follow my instructions. Prepare your brain for the Cortex Labs Nootropics podcast.
I gotta tell you, being an entrepreneur, I will not go through the rest of my career without taking nootropics. Aniracetam, Piracetam, Modafinil, Nupep, Uridine monophosphate. I mean, phenylpiracetam, forget it. You can always have a better brain.
The Cortex Labs Nootropics podcast is about to begin.
Episode number 95 of the Cortex Labs Nootropics podcast. I am your host, Ryan Michael Ballo, the master behind the largest reservoir of nootropics content on the web. Check it out at livecortex.com/blog, on YouTube at the Cortex Labs Nootropics channel, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cortex Stacks. Going to talk about Piracetam making people antisocial. This is probably the 10th time right around the 10th time I've come across this, and I think there's a reason for that because I've run into it in taking other nootropics before, particularly cholinergics. It all really has to do with the dosing. So we're going to get to that in just a second. We're still running specials on everything we have. First, the coupon code Thanksgiving, just the word Thanksgiving, gets you $9 off of everything right now, all through the rest of this weekend. Today is November 30th, Friday, November 30th. So it's current today. To be current through the weekend. Probably the best part of that, or the best deal, would be the Cortex Nootropic stack. So our stack is, it's a super awesome focus, motivation, verbal fluency, productive drive stack. And normally it's $33, but if you use the coupon code Thanksgiving, it takes it all the way down to $24 per bottle. I mean, that's super cheap. Even if you take it and you somehow figure out that you hate it, which is highly unlikely because most people respond super positively to Cortex, you only spent $24. And the upside is, if it's awesome for you, which it is for most folks, you get a bottle for super cheap. I mean, you could spend basically $50 and get 2 bottles. That's awesome. If not, just get one. Use the coupon code Thanksgiving at livecortex.com. If you need my help personally, we have a consulting service on nootropics. Buy that at livecortex.com. And if you're new to nootropics, we wrote a book for you. It's called Smarter, Better, Faster. It teaches you how to use nootropics the way that I've learned to use them over the years. And it's digital. You can get all that stuff at livecortex.com. But the most important thing is the Cortex stack with the coupon code Thanksgiving as an extension of Cyber Week all through the weekend. All right. So why does Piracetam make me antisocial? This is one of the situations that I've run into that I've seen people talk about. This one particularly comes from a Reddit thread which goes, I took 1,200 milligrams this morning with caffeine. When I got to class, so obviously this person's a college student, I felt like a lunatic. I couldn't talk to anyone, and every time I did, I had to pretend to be fine, but inside my head, I would be freaking out. I had to leave early because I couldn't handle it. What can I do to make this better? So what I assume is happening is that he got a degree of social anxiety or just didn't want to talk to people when taking Piracetam. He doesn't really say that he experienced any benefits from the Piracetam, which is sort of hard to gauge, but there's basically 2 reasons this can happen. The first is, and I'll just give you my experience with certain nootropic compounds. If I take certain compounds that are cholinergic in nature, like Nupep, Racetams, Alcar, choline sources, centrophenoxine, DMAE, things like this, and I take them over the threshold that I know is best for me. I've got doses for all these things that work best for me. And sometimes that changes, but largely it's the same. What ends up happening is I get, productive benefit. I get the excitatory neurotransmission. I kind of want to work. I want to get into stuff. My brain's processing a lot quicker. But I don't want to be around people. In fact, the most standout thing that happens to me in those cases, again, when I get my dose wrong on hardcore cholinergic nootropic compounds, I'm just sort of, I don't want to use the word anxious, but I'm edgy, right? Basically, people can tick me off quickly, and I don't want to be around them. I don't want to talk. I don't want to have long conversations. I really just want to work, okay? So it's like I get in a mode where I'm just like hyper-focused on work, and I really don't have the patience and time for people's like BS, people that are superfluous or talk too much or just like not getting to the point right away. I don't have time for that, and I don't want to sit and have conversations. So that makes me effectively antisocial when I take certain cholinergics just like this person's taking, and it's the wrong dose for me. So if that's the case, then the dose or the choline source in this case is probably off. He only took 1,200 milligrams of paracetam, which is a relatively low dose. But if this is someone that's cholinergically dominant and choline-affecting nootropic compounds in even modest doses take them over the edge in terms of acetylcholine brain functioning, then that could easily be the case here. The other thing is like, the person's really not talking about their choline source. And what I've come to learn is choline sources, particularly not racetams, but actual acetylcholine donors. They can, when taken in the wrong doses, they can make you antisocial in a different way. Not because you're super productive and not because your brain's functioning awesome and you're like PO'd at people who are being slow and superfluous and not applying brevity. Not that at all. But what happens when you take too much alpha GPC or CDP choline is number one, lethargy and sort of tiredness. But it can throw the brain for a wacky loop, and I'm not entirely sure why this happens. Maybe the brain's trying to compensate. It's like lowering the amount of acetylcholine because there's way too much, so it's trying to get it out of circulation. Acetylcholine esterase might be just sort of cranked up and trying to take and recycle the acetylcholine because it's too much to deal with in your brain, so it's trying to store it elsewhere so you can sort of use it over time in a measured manner. But when that happens, it might be taking away from the acetylcholine concentrations in the brain at the time, trying to kind of compensate, right? Getting back to homeostasis. And when that happens, you definitely don't want to talk to people. And that's, again, not because you're processing so good in your PO to people's superfluousness, but more because it's sort of I don't want to say kind of makes you stupid, but it definitely slows down brain processes in a way where communicating with people is not something you want to do. And it doesn't slow things down in a good way. It kind of just makes you dull and not functional. This is why I always just sort of preach the right doses on alpha GPC and CDP choline for people. Because if you take them over, like the spectrum of side effects or the quantity of things that can go wrong are vast, and you can easily get into a situation where you just don't want to talk to people, where literally you feel like your social capacity is just dumb, and that could be too much acetylcholine, it could be too little acetylcholine. But in those cases too, there's probably an interplay between acetylcholine and other neurotransmitters, and so perhaps dopamine, perhaps serotonin, perhaps GABA is getting thrown off by this sort of mismatch in cholinergic activity. And it takes somebody to a place where they're not confident in their capacity to be verbally fluent with people, and their brain is not working well. So in that case, you don't want to talk to people. I mean, think about when you've had like a hardcore hangover and you just can't think. Do you want to talk to people? You definitely don't want to talk to people, right? You want to be antisocial. You're in your head. You've got racing thoughts. Like nothing seems right. And if you talk, like the stuff just doesn't come out the right way. Your brain is not working well. Your verbal fluency is taxed. So you're not going to want to talk to people. Okay, so what's the takeaway? I mean, the takeaway here is, maybe just paracetam by itself is doing any of those two things. The paracetam might be raising choline concentrations, which it does in the brain, and that might be causing the person to, both things. It might be causing the person to, because they're functioning so well, they're PO'd at everybody, don't want to talk to people, don't want to be social. They just want to get to work. I really wish we knew in this case if this person actually had productivity, because that would tell us a little bit more. But that's the rule of thumb. If you're being productive and the brain's actually working well, but you don't want to talk to people, you're just PO'd. You're just annoyed because you're a little anxious, and high concentrations of acetylcholine or high usage of acetylcholine in the brain can make you productive while also making you pretty not tolerable of other people, in a conversational capacity. It could be the case that, again, the paracetam is using up. Paracetam could have been using up too much choline, and then that causes this effect of less acetylcholine in the brain, which could put someone in a place where they feel inept to communicate, in which case they're not going to communicate. And then it could also just be the choline source was too high, and that essentially did the same thing. It could have done either of those things. It could have, made choline too high in the brain, and then the person was functioning really well, but didn't want to talk to people because their brain was working too good. That happens to me. I just don't have time for slowness. Or again, it could have been like acetylcholine esterase, an enzyme that basically breaks down and recycles acetylcholine, kicking into overdrive, making it so that there's less concentrations of acetylcholine in the brain. And then the person essentially felt inept at communicating, and they ended up in a place where they wanted to be antisocial, okay? So the fix for that, just like the fix for a lot of problems that people run into with nootropics, is getting the dose right. It could be getting the choline source right. Some people just respond a lot better to choline bitartrate when they take racetams. It just seems to work better for them. It's not such a blast of usable acetylcholine in the brain, the neurotransmitter that choline supplements build. It's just sort of an even distribution with a good solid usage of it via the racetam. All right, so hammering home the idea of making sure you experiment very wisely and very consistently and very robustly with different doses. And I got to say, the best way to understand the doses that worked well for you is to jot it all down. I mean, I have a giant notebook, especially when we were doing the experimentation for the Cortex stack, just bringing stuff in, seeing how it affected me. I mean, I had 100 compounds in. And then before that and after that, in my time experimenting with nootropics, I write everything down. Today I took 10 milligrams of Noopept, 300 milligrams alpha GPC, 300 milligrams Alcar, and a B complex. This is how I felt. This is how long it lasted. This is how much more productive I was. Or this gave me a negative side effect. And then I look at it all the time and I recognize, going back to it, okay, my dose is wrong. I'll take the dose down on one of the compounds, 100, 200 milligrams. Try again. If that doesn't fix it, take it down a little more. Try again. If that doesn't fix it, take it back to where it was, the initial compound, and then move to the next compound. In that particular case, I would look at the alpha GPC. Let's take that down or up. Let's figure out, what the hell that is. And if I can't change it with the alpha GPC, if I can't change the negative side effect, then you move on to the next compound, which is Alcar. Take that down 100 milligrams. Take it up 500 milligrams, right? Find where you're at, but jot everything down. You got to be super surgical with this stuff. You can't use broad brush recommendations. You have to find what works really good for you. Okay, so hope that's been helpful. Ryan at livecortex.com. If you have any questions you want me to do a podcast about, we would gladly do it if I can answer the question, if I have experience with it. Check us out on the web, livecortex.com/blog. Like us on Facebook, please, guys, facebook.com/cortexstacks. And remember, all of our stuff is on sale right now. If you use the coupon code Thanksgiving all through the weekend, you can get a bottle of Cortex, our awesome nootropic stack, for $24. That's super cheap for what's being called the only pre-made stack that works, and Cortex rocks people's world. I mean, it's such a powerful stack that does so many different things. The primary thing that people experience when they take Cortex is just they're like 30 minutes later after administration, they're motivated to work. Their brain turns on. They have a lot of energy. They're super fluid, which means they're verbally fluent. And their brain kind of just like works quick, but not too fast, but super cohesively. Cortex is an awesome nootropic stack. Buy that at livecortex.com. Do it now. Use the coupon code Thanksgiving before that special ends. The rest of our stuff you can get at livecortex.com, like our consulting service. If you need my help on any of this stuff, just book a consulting call with me. I can help you figure this stuff out. And if you're new to nootropics, buy Smarter, Better, Faster. That is our book that teaches you everything you need to know about nootropics, and it is digital. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Rock on. Talk to you next time.